Welcome to the Kidmin podcast with Dr. Val and Dr. Virginia, where we talk about everything Kidmin
and pull back the curtain on some of the surprises and challenges in children's ministry that nobody prepares you for.
I'm Dr. Val, and together we have over 45 years of experience in children's ministry.
I'm Dr. Virginia. Valerie and I met over 10 years ago in our doctoral program at Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary. We are excited to share with you all the great stuff that we have picked up over the years. We want to minister to you, the children's minister.
Welcome, friends. Thank you so much for joining us today. We started off this recording with Dr. Virginia joining us, and unfortunately, she's had some technical difficulties, and so she had to drop out. But David and I decided we're going to move forward and still have this wonderful conversation because Dr. Virginia and I were so excited that we have David Reneau with us again today to talk about his new book. So we're so glad you're here.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I feel smarter just hanging out with y'all. And so this is my third time on your podcast. And so I'm just excited. I'm so excited to be back here and spend some time talking with the doctors.
We are so excited. I said we should have some sort of award for the most time somebody has put up with Dr. Virginia and I by coming on and chatting with us.
I feel honored. I do.
Oh, well, we are excited to have you, not just because we love talking with you. And obviously, I'll link in our notes below the other episodes that you've joined us on so that people can listen in if they've missed you. But we are super excited to talk about your new book. You've written a book called Level Kidmin, the Children's Pastor's Practical Guide to Building a Thriving Ministry. And so we're super excited to talk about today. I want to start off, though, with asking you just to tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your ministry background, and just in case somebody hasn't seen a previous episode with you.
Yeah. So I've been in ministry for 17 years. 15 of that was in children's ministry. And about near the end of 2020, during the great reshuffling of everybody, I started getting the bug of like, I don't know if children's ministry, if I started to feel like my calling was shifting a little bit. So I started to look at and going into lead pastor, executive pastor. And so I went to be an executive pastor for a couple of years. And so since I've last talked to you, I forget it was sometime like in May or something. Since I last talked to you, I have just been elected as a lead pastor in Toccoa, Georgia. So I start that job in about a week and a half. And so we're excited about what's coming and this new place that we're in. So even though I'm not in that, I like to call it, I'm not in day-to-day children's ministry. I still have a heart for kids and a heart for kidmen and that was really what I wanted to do when I wrote this book. It was like, okay, here's everything I've learned after 15 years of ministry. I want to put this all in the hands of other children's pastors who come up behind me so they don't have to learn the hard way and learn from what I have.
Right. Well, and I think that that's just so beneficial because one of the things I think that we have been lacking in our resources for children's ministry has been really great practical books on how to do just the day-to-day things that happen in ministry, because we're not taught that in any way. Even if you're going through a children's ministry program, it typically tends to be more focused on theology and the bigger picture items, which is great. But then you come in on your first day to that empty office and you have all of the things that you need to do on a daily basis sitting before you. And so having a guide for that, I think, is incredibly helpful.
Yeah, that's really like the heart of why I wanted to write this book, because when I started 17 years ago, there just wasn't a lot. This was 2008. So like Facebook wasn't a thing. It kind of was. I was still managing my top 5 on MySpace. There was podcasts weren't really a thing. They were just getting started. You could go to the Christian bookstore, but like, good luck trying to find a book on children's ministry there. No. And so after doing it for about a year or so, I was really just I was having so much stress and so many problems, and I just didn't know what to do. And I would even go to my fellow staff members, the youth pastor, the worship pastor, and go talk to them and like, hey, I'm having this issue. And they would look at me like, why is that a problem? Like
Right.
they just,
Right.
we were in two different worlds. They just didn't
Yeah.
understand. So, what happened, I went to a breakfast with a bunch of pastors in the city, and I met this one guy, and he said, "Hey, you should meet our new kids pastor. He just started a podcast on children's ministry." And I was like, and I'm an early adopter, so I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go
Yeah.
get this guy's podcast." So I got it, and this is how old this was. I didn't even have an iPod. I had like a Philips. It wasn't even a Windows. It was like a Philips MP3 player, and I had to download the podcast to iTunes and then sync it to
Yes.
the plug it in and then listen to it that way.
Yeah.
And when I was listening to this guy's podcast, it was just like, oh, this guy gets me. This guy knows what I'm going through. This guy knows what we're doing. And so I was able to call him up, and we were able to go to lunch and built this relationship. And so it was just incredible help for that. And so my thought is like, there are children's pastors. There's way more resources out there now than there were 17 years ago, but there's not a lot in that children's ministry space. And so I want to give like, hey, here's a book. You've been in this for a year or two. You've kind of figured out like you're making things happen on Sunday morning, but you're sitting there like, all right, how do I get this to the next level? How do I take this beyond just taking care of these few kids? How do I make this grow? How do I make this more effective, more strategic? Those things.
Right. Well, and that's just what I think, that children's ministry is so very specific with the needs that we have when we're running it day to day. It's so very different from every other ministry in the church. And so it's just like you said, I think if you talk to most, of course, now you're going to be a senior pastor that's going to be very different because you're going to have that experience. But in my experience, if we talk to senior pastors, if we talk to, the directors of Christian education in our churches, and you ask them, so what do I do as a children's ministry? What are my responsibilities? I don't think people have a very strong grasp on exactly how to run that ministry day to day. So there really isn't someone to tell you. And I wish that it was funny, because my husband's always talked about how that he wishes that we had strong communities in children's ministry where you have those connections with other ministers the way that he does in his technical world. And I said, we just don't necessarily. Ministry life is so busy, and it's really easy for churches to become siloed, and you don't have that communication with other children's ministries as easily. And so I think having a resource that you can hold in your hands and pull from is just vitally important.
Yeah. It has been, and I put a whole like appendix in my book of like, here's all the resources that I use, books and podcasts and groups and stuff. But being a part of community has totally made it better, because like there's just sometimes we're just like, what do you do? Like, how do you come up with snack options? Like if you're trying to go pick a curriculum, or if you're trying to like, we all have the volunteer issue. How are we going to get the volunteers? Or even like just the minor problem of service went over 10, 15 minutes. And all the adults are like, man, it was great because the spirit moved here. We were doing awesome. And in the children's ministry, it was a different spirit that moved as chaos ensued. And they're just like, all right, we played this game 15 times. And you're struggling to go find something. And so, there's just being able to commiserate with other people, but then also get ideas and realize that you're not alone. And that we can all work in here to be successful.
So when you were writing this book, you really had all children's ministers in mind, whether they were brand new or whether or not they had been in the trenches for 5 or 10 years at this point.
Yeah. A person like, I don't think they could use this book in college. Like you couldn't use it as like a college textbook. You need to have some experience in children's ministry in order to be effective with this book. So, because I get highly technical, especially like when you get into small groups and like, how do you divide your small groups and that kind of stuff. And so like, it's one thing to read theory, but when you're actually doing it and seeing it and like you've had experience of doing this, then you're like, okay, then you can see this one-to-one type issue. So if you've been in ministry for at least a year, like this book is for you. This is going to help you get to that, move forward.
Well, great. Well, I loved sort of the way that you kicked off with one of my favorite chapters, just diving into the book, was called Working with the House. And I have always had a heart where I've always felt like, as the children's minister, I'm going to go in and I'm going to fight for my people. I'm going to fight for my volunteers. I'm going to fight for my kids. But I always had in the top of my brain, but we are a part of a larger ministry. And so can you tell us a little bit about why you feel like it's important for the church staff to work together well, and for you to have this bigger view of your church rather than just focusing, just children's ministry all by itself in a little corner?
Yeah. You have to realize that you are not alone. You are not a silo. You're not a ministry. You are not a church. And some people even, it's like, it's children's church. That's true, but you're part of the whole. And your pastor has brought you on to accomplish a part of his vision that he physically can't do because he's preaching on Sunday morning. He's over with the adult service. And so he's over there. And so you are all working together. You and the youth pastor and the worship pastor and small groups pastor, you are all working together in that. And so if you keep that idea that we're all in this together, that you are going to be far more successful, because what ends up happening is that you create this scarcity. If you live in this siloed place, you live in this scarcity mindset that everything is mine and everything is for me and everyone is out to take from what I have. And if you go with that way, that's not the way of Jesus. Jesus was open-handed and take this, if someone asks for your, tells you to walk a mile, you go 2 miles. Someone asks for your robe, give them robe and your shirt. And so you want to give those things, because if you're constantly butting heads with your people, especially like if you're butting heads with like the youth pastor, because a lot of times a youth pastor and a kids pastor are enemies of each other, which is not good for the house. The church can only move at the speed of unity. That if everyone's working together, that's how fast it can go. But if there's always a fight happening between the youth and the kids, then you're not going to be able to go and reach more people for Jesus, which is ultimately the goal. Like, we want to disciple kids, and we want to see them come to Jesus, but like, your ministry is more than just how many kids come to you on a Sunday morning. Your ministry is to the community. And so you have to, if you're going to reach out to the community, you got to partner with everybody to bring it in and say, okay, how can I help with this? So several things I talked about in the book was, when you're starting with the youth pastor, one of the best things to start off with is to do a graduation event, because that's a natural time to do that. And we're recording this in July, so a lot of people are asking that question. Where can we do this? And so you are saying goodbye to your 5th and 6th graders, and you're sending them to to the youth ministry. Well, this is a perfect time to go work with the youth pastor and develop an event together. But as you pass the baton, because you've done everything you can to disciple these kids, now it's time for the youth pastor to take it over. So if you've already had that adversarial conversation, then go offer an olive branch and say, hey, let's do something for our 6th graders so that they can meld well into that ministry. And then you want to offer, when you're sitting in staff meeting, you don't want to just wait until they talk about children's ministry. Be attentive in all of the things, because you are a minister of the gospel just like everybody else in the room. And even though 95% of that conversation is about what's going on with the adults, you minister to adults too, because you lead volunteers and you lead parents. So that's 2 of the 3 groups. That's in another chapter. 2 of the 3 groups that you lead is parent problem issues of variance. You need to have a say in that and contribute to that, because if you check out, then you're just going to end up just over there in the corner, and your influence and your impact in the church and in the community is going to be limited, because it's only in your ideas and not what everybody else can do. And then it just makes you valuable to the church and valuable to the things that are going on, because you are offering different ideas and different things. Because one thing that children's pastors do is that their children's pastors fit 2 stereotypes. We're either the clown or the administrator. And so, and so many people look at us as kids pastors as the clowns, and because we can do magic and we can make balloon animals and all that stuff. But also, like, if you look at what a kids pastor does, we manage multiple rooms. multiple age groups, multiple learning styles, multiple volunteer teams. We can manage multiple different curriculums. We're doing events and outreaches. We are doing everything the whole church does. We're just doing it for
Right.
those that are 12 and under.
Right.
So
Right.
we are so you can offer things from a structure standpoint, from a strategy standpoint, from an administrative standpoint that the other ministries may not have the skills to do or know how to do, because this is something that you do every week anyway.
Right. Well, and that was one of the things I used to fight for when I would be in staff meeting too, is like when we would be talking about Vacation Bible School, and I would have like the senior adult minister or the adult director, or, those people that were in the room that dealt with
Yeah.
other ministries would kind of clock out
Mhm.
and would not expect to even come for the week of VBS. And that's one of my soapboxes, is that people understand we don't just work with children. We work with parents and grandparents and volunteers from all different ages, from all walks of the church. Like we're hitting every single age group in children's ministry, not just preschool and children, but we're seeing everyone. And I would tell those pastors, you realize that they're going to be grandparents and parents walking into this building every day that you might not get a chance to connect with any other time,
Right.
but that week. And so it's helping the church see that the family should work together, that we shouldn't be separated out just in our own little ministries, and that children's ministry does have a bigger effect on the church than people think.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
It does. It's
yeah.
not just, we're not just sitting back there. It's not childcare. And how many
Yeah.
times have we talked about that it's not childcare?
Oh my goodness.
And so many people do. And even when I was interviewing for for a lead pastor job, I talked to, they'd already turned me down. So I ran into them at a district meeting. And one of them said, "Oh, you going from children's ministry to lead pastor is a big jump," and I was like, no, it's actually not. It's kind of like, it's not a big jump because I'm already doing everything. I'm just talking to
Right.
30-year-olds instead of 3-year-olds. It's not,
Right, right. The function of it is not different.
No.
And it's one of the reasons why I really fight, for children's ministers to be in those meetings, to be included in staff meetings, to be a part of the big picture, and not just feel like they can only be in there when you're just talking about children's ministry. And so I love that you make that point and that you do that so well.
Well, thank
That's
you.
great.
So
All
I
right.
suggest that, pay attention to staff meetings, offer what you can. You may not have certain skills but you can always offer something in the room.
Yeah.
And see how you can help outside of it. And they may look at you like you're weird, because especially if you've never done that before, like why are you raising your hand for this? But that will make you more valuable to the team. And ultimately help the synergy of the group of the team working together to reach more people for the gospel, because they're like, oh, well, the kids pastor's just over here while we're over here doing this.
Right,
They're like, no,
right.
we're all in this together.
I love that. We could do a whole episode just on that particular topic, and I'd be thrilled. So, but I want to try to hit some other things. So we're gonna move on forward. I'm gonna ask you, say in the book, in communicating with parents, you say not to focus on reaching everyone. So what method do you find most useful when you're trying to make sure that your message is heard?
There's the $1 million question right there, because that's what everybody wants. They want, can I just do one thing? Can I just send an email? Can I just do a social media post? Can I just send a text and everybody's going to know about it? And I made that same mistake when I first started out. I always sent an email on Fridays to my people. I was like an announcement. And I just made the assumption. I sent it through Outlook, and I made the assumption that everyone is reading this email that I spent an hour and a half composing, graphics and links and all this stuff. And everybody's going to read this thing. And then I finally upgraded to Constant Contact. I eventually made the switch over to MailChimp, and I was hit with this devastating news that 12% of the people are reading this email, and even fewer, less than 1%, are actually clicking all these links that I made all this effort to create. I'm like, oh my gosh, what are we doing? And so I realized, when I say not try to focus on everyone, is that there is not one particular communication method that you are going to use that is going to communicate with everyone. Okay. So what you want to do is you want to do as many different communication methods as you can do, so that because not everyone is going to engage with every piece of communication you're going to put out, but everyone should engage with at least one piece of communication that you're giving out. Okay. So if you're sending out an email, a social media post, a text, a take home flyer, you're talking to them in the hallway, you set up a Facebook group and there's conversations, you did a Facebook event, you're doing all of these things to kind of communicate with them. And I talk about in the book how to do those things. That's like my longest chapter in the whole book, about how to communicate with people, how to do all these different things. And as you're doing all these things, then what they can do is they can then pick which one of those things they want to engage with.
Right.
Do you want to read my email? Do you want to get into the text message? Do you want to see the take home paper? And I had a rare father a couple years ago. He just got aggravated. He felt I communicated too much, and so he disengaged with everything. He unsubscribed from everything I gave out, and then his kids started missing stuff, and he came to me and was like, why didn't you tell me? And I was like, did you read the email? No, I unsubscribed. Did you do the text message? No, I told her to stop. Did you take the take home paper? My wife gets that. I never read it.
Yeah. Then
that's sorry, that's not on me.
Right.
It was on the video announcements. It's on the screens in the hallway. What do you need me to do? What do you want me to? I'm doing all these things, and so it gives you a little bit of protection when people come to you, just like, well, I didn't know. And I was like, well, when I can lay out these 7 different ways that I communicated to you and you chose to engage with none of them.
Right.
You can get mad, but okay.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I mean by communication. You want to do, and a large part of what I do on a week to week basis is write those communication things. I'm doing a day of curriculum and service prep, but I'm also doing a day of communication and writing all those things out. Scheduling is your friend. That was part of the reason why I moved to MailChimp and Constant Contact, because I could write the email on Monday and it'd go out on Friday and everything would be okay. And even you can schedule social media posts in groups and all that stuff. So you don't have to remember every single day. I would sit down for an hour when I was full time. I would sit down for an hour and just pound out the whole week's worth of social media information, and then it's done for me. I don't have to worry about it anymore. So, and that really helps when you go on vacation too, because then the communication still happens.
Oh, yeah.
So when you're off on vacation, your communication doesn't drop to nothing because you had to work ahead, but you prepared everything, and so it still runs while you're gone. And so that's what we want to do. So you really want to make sure that you have as much communication with your people. And then if you're talking about what social media platform you need to go to, you need to go to the one that they're on. A lot of people are on Instagram. Almost all the parents I work with, I think this is probably changing now. But a lot of the parents that work, most of them are on Facebook. So you should have a Facebook, at minimum, a Facebook group. And I don't think you should do a page. The page was really valuable 15 years ago, but page is much more forward facing. You got to pay for engagement. But groups is in there. And if you can have that build that conversation, build that community, they're far more likely to see it.
I love that. You have to know your people. I had a conference that I did that I would lead back when social media was just becoming a thing, that I sort of would go through all the different platforms, everything that was out there, to kind of let people know these are the things, these are what this is what you have to watch for. And I had a church ask me to come out and do that. And I was in the middle of the conference, and I started realizing that they weren't engaging with it. And people started telling me, because it was way out in the middle of nowhere in Tennessee. It was and they were like, we don't even have Wi-Fi out here. We have, because this, like I said, this was really early in it. And so it was having that conversation with the children's minister to explain, you can't really, it's just because this is the hot new way to communicate. If your people can't communicate this way, then that's really not going to work for you. So you have to know your people and know what they engage on and know where they're at to really be able to find that, that perfect way.
Don't put everything on TikTok and Snapchat, because they're not, they're just the most likely, if you're working with millennial parents and above, they're not on there. So, I mean, you can put some stuff on there, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't put all your eggs into that basket.
No.
I
You
will
can't
say with
count on
text
it.
messaging, I used Remind, but Remind just moved just for schools now, so you can't use it for free anymore.
Right.
So you do want to look at that. But the latest statistics that I saw is 97% of all text messages are read.
Hmm.
The hardest part I had for that was parents opting in to text messaging. They
Right.
just didn't. And so I opted in for them because I collected all their email, I collected all their phone numbers, and I just added them to
Right.
the system.
Right.
And then sent them a message saying, "Hey, you're added to this system. Would you like to
Right.
opt out?" And then give
Right.
them the option. So when you're adding
Right.
them to these optional channels, you always
Hmm.
want to give them an option to unsubscribe at that initial
Right.
touch. That way
Right.
you're not like, "Hey, I'm just." How annoying is it when you check your email or you get a text message like, "I didn't sign up for
Oh,
this." What,
yeah.
and so
Yeah.
you need to give them, "Hey, we're so glad you're here. We're glad you came to be a part of us. Would you like to, we're going to start sending you this message. If you don't want this, hit
Right.
stop or hit unsubscribe.
Right.
That way the people can opt out." And then they're not annoyed. Then
Hmm.
you just send it. You're asking their permission to put it in there. Because if you do, and I would love it if they would just like, "Oh, let me sign up for everything." They're not going to do it. And so
Yeah.
you're going to you got to push them a little bit. And then if they
Right.
choose not to opt out, hey, it's game on. Send them all the,
Right. Oh,
and there's
yeah.
rules of how often you should message them here and there, and
Right.
we can talk about that if you want. But you can message them because they said, I want this. All right, well then I'm
Right.
going to keep sending it to you.
Right. Right. Because there's that balance of making sure you get your message out there and you let them know, and then oversaturation of
Yeah,
where they get it so much they stop paying attention to it. So
yeah,
you have to find that sweet spot for your
yeah.
people. And
My
so,
son's school
yeah.
did that where they used Remind. They didn't do it this year, but last year, I mean, it was at 3 o'clock. I would get 5 Remind messages
Hmm.
every day, and some were pertinent to the school, some were pertinent to the district, some were just sent to just general parents when it was really only addressing ninth graders or 10th graders, and I
Hmm.
got a fourth grader, and I'm like, what, And so
Yep.
I just ignored all of them. And
Right.
I was missing important information because there was too many messages. It was like
Right.
I got more things to deal with than Remind messages at 3 o'clock.
Right. Right. One of the things that I really like that you were talking about in the book was follow up with visitors that come. Why do you feel like it's such an important step for leaders not to take for granted?
Hmm. I I was really bad at follow up, just dismally bad because I was in that first year of ministry, and I was doing everything I could to take care of my kids. And then I started realizing that some of the kids weren't coming back, and I didn't know where they went. I didn't know if they were coming back. And so what I realized was like follow up is an essential part of showing that you care for your people. It's
Hmm.
showing because you're telling them that I noticed that you weren't here.
Hmm.
And so you want to send that follow up. You want to set up the systems in there. And I've used Planning Center to set up lists and other church management systems to run a list to show me, okay, who hasn't checked in 3 weeks so I can follow up with them and say, hey, I haven't seen you. Send them a postcard or whatever. And because what you want to do is you want to show them that you care, that I missed them. And then with those follow up cards, I always give some kind of incentive to get them to come back. I joked with one family because they would only come about once every 6 weeks. And so every time they came back, they had another card with an incentive for them to get. And it's like, oh, okay, y'all just come so you can get the free prize. That's what you're doing. But it also pointed out, it's like, hey guys, you're only coming 6 weeks here. What are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it also showed that you noticed. And so the
Right.
follow up is, I know I'm going to talk about guest follow up in a second here, but when I'm talking
Yeah.
about just general follow up with your people, you want to, so when a parent or volunteer comes to you and tells you they have a procedure or they got a prayer request or like there's a death in family or they're going up for a new job or whatever, you want to write that down and you want to reach out to them that week and just, follow up on it and just see how it's going. Tell them that you've been praying for them. And even if you
Hmm.
haven't been praying for them, just say a quick little prayer before you send the text, and then you're not telling them,
Right.
then you're not lying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because just like, hey, praying for you. And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
it shows, and that what that does is that builds a better team of your volunteers. If you're following up with your volunteers, and I would even follow up with my volunteers, like when they told me that they were going, hey, I'm going to be on vacation this week, and they missed their serve, I would still follow up with them Then it was like, hey, missed you this week. I hope you enjoyed your vacation. Again,
Right.
just so that you were showing to them. Or they
Right.
sometimes they no call, no show. All right. Well, instead of me angrily calling them like, dude, this room
Right.
wasn't filled because you weren't here. It was like, hey, we missed you this Sunday. Is everything okay?
Okay.
What
Yeah.
happened? And then you can try to, is it the family issue, or they unsubscribed from the email and they didn't get the notification, any number of things, but you want to follow up with those things and with
Right.
those people. Then the next part is the guest follow up. And this is where, when people talk about follow up, they talk about this the most, because what happens is a person comes to your church on the first time. If you don't follow up with those people, there's no guarantee that they're actually going to come back. They may come
Right.
and just absolutely love what's happening there, but if you don't have another connection with them, then then it's like, oh, that was a nice thing I did one time. And
Right.
so what you want to do is you want to follow up with them, and you send them a postcard, send them a text, call them, one or all three of these things. Do some type of follow-up system with the kids and with the parents. Because a lot of times what happens in children's ministry is we do follow-up just for the kids. And then the parents, we hold on to all their information, and the adults don't
Right.
have. We have their mortgage license.
Right.
We got everything, because
Got it
that parent wants to
all.
share all of their information for their child. And
Right.
meanwhile, they didn't even fill out a Connect card in the adult service. So like, this is talk about working with the house. Take that card that has put all your kid information you need. Take all that, and then take it to the person that's in charge of adult follow-up and say, here's all this additional information. And give it to that person so they can put it in there and put it in their follow-up person for their adults. And if your church doesn't have a follow-up system for the adults, guess what? You're now in charge of something.
Yes.
So
Yes.
because you at
Congratulations.
least can follow up with your parents and say,
Right.
do some type of follow up with them. And so what I would do is, for my follow up, at least for my kids, what I would do is I would send them a postcard in the mail. And it would just say, hey, thanks for coming to my ministry. We're so glad you're here. And then at the bottom, I say, bring this card back with you and you'll get a free prize. A free prize for coming. And a lot of times that was just a dollar box of candy. But
Right.
it's more than just a bag, because it's a box, and
Right.
it's basically the same amount of candy, but it has this wow factor. So hey, you come and get this. And when I had a store, I would let them get anything they wanted from the store. So sometimes it was that box
Right.
of candy, or sometimes it was a toy from like Five Below. And I was like,
Right.
I was just, hey, you can
Yeah.
come have this thing. And so now the kid is getting a piece of mail, which they never get. They're getting a piece of mail, and they're saying, come back here, you get a free thing, a free prize. Now that kid's like, can we please go back to this church?
Yes.
Because they want to go get their free thing. And so when you send out that postcard, it takes a little bit of effort, but do not send it to the Davidson family. Send it to Val, and then send another one to Virginia.
Yes.
Send it to every kid that was there, because then I'm the oldest of three. We fought. Okay. And it's like, why did they get it and I didn't? Okay. So
Yeah.
send it to all three of them. And it's like, hey, here's your thing that you can get as a free item. And then the kid is like, look, I got a piece of mail. And then they're excited to bring it back. And then when they bring it back and they get the thing, then I have another card that I give them when they cash in their prize. And it says, hey, if you come back again, you get another prize and a bigger prize. And so what I would do is I would go get those $5 candy tubes. They're like this big. I'm trying to make it fit in the camera shot.
Oh, yeah.
They're,
Yeah.
they're bigger than they're bigger than my hands. But I mean, is that, and so that has an even bigger wow factor. It's like, if you come back again, I'm going to give you this. And it's
Yeah.
like 3 boxes of candy equivalent inside, but
Right.
yeah, but it's still like, whoa.
It's just that,
And
yeah.
so now I really want to come back, because what studies have shown is that if you get a person to come back to something 3 times within a relatively short amount of time, they are now a regular at that place. Okay. So if this works as, I heard this from a restaurateur. He said, if you go to a restaurant and you go to that same restaurant 3 times within 3 weeks, like this is a place that we go to. But if you go to just a restaurant just one time, and it's like, you may have a story from that restaurant, but like a year later, and they're like, I don't really, I ate there once, it's not part of like your regular rhythm and flow.
Yeah.
And especially since we're talking about church, we want you coming to church to be a part of the regular rhythm and flow. And so we want to incentivize, and we want to notice that you've been back. And so that you can have that steady flow of guests, because if you have all these guests come into your church and you don't retain those guests, then you've just wasted your time. You've just spun
Yeah,
your
it's
wheels. You
just
didn't do any.
cycling.
You're
Yeah.
not going to grow that way.
It's that important connection, because that's why
Mhm.
I love that you said that about the sending the cards, because I'm still a big proponent of mail because
Mhm.
of that one reason. Kids never get mail, and
Mhm.
it makes them feel special to see their name on something.
Right.
And I think that's that same idea. It's, it makes them feel special when you can make that connection, when you can do that one different thing that they don't get to see anywhere else, even if it's
Mhm.
not that big of a deal, even if it's a box of candy, it's still something special, something different. And so it,
Mhm.
it, it engages people in a special way. And
Yeah.
so I think that that's why it's so important for us to remember, because I hear too many children's ministers say, I just don't have time.
Mhm.
I just don't have time for follow
It's
up.
you have to make time. So for me, on my schedule for my to-do list, when I was full time, it was a little different when I was part time, but I was full time. um, Mondays was meetings and connections.
Hmm.
And so Monday mornings was all our staff meetings. And then we'd go to lunch and then come back. And then I'd head down to my kids' area, collect all my cards
Hmm.
and put all of it, because I'm not want to put a lot of thought into Sunday because it's a week away.
Right.
And I'm just burned from just spending 2-3 hours in meetings.
Hmm.
And I'm too full from lunch. I had too many carbs. And so like, I'm not thinking real clearly, but you know what I can do is I can stick some labels on some postcards,
Right.
and so I'm going to go take that, do a little data entry, put it in there. And so that was the goal for the day. And so if the
Hmm.
follow up was done that day, then it was there. Then I'm going to do the other stuff. Now, if you're bivocational volunteer, that looks different.
Yeah.
But and it's because of all of our different work schedules, it's a different way to do it, but it's an
Right.
essential part. So like when I was teaching, I didn't necessarily do the follow up part, but I did the
Hmm.
data entry part.
Right.
And so took all those cards home on Sunday, and then
Hmm.
Monday evening I would sit down and I would spend, depending. Sometimes there's one card. I mean, we're talking 30
Right.
seconds here.
Right.
It's not like you're getting a
No.
stack. If you're at a church where you're getting a stack of 30 cards a week, then you should be paid anyway. You
Hmm.
should, you should be full
Right.
time, to where it's going to take a significant amount of time. You
Oh,
should
yeah.
probably should have someone on staff whose job it is to put all that information in the first
Right.
place. So we're
Right.
talking about 1 or 2 cards at a time. And then even like you print it off on a label or you handwrite the thing, it just takes
Yeah.
intentionality and putting those systems in place to say this is what it is. Because if you want to move beyond your 6 kids that you're ministering to every week,
Yeah. Hmm.
then you need to follow up with, when the new kids show up, you need to show that you care, you noticed, and that you want to see them back. They're welcome to come
Right.
back.
Oh, yeah. Well, and a lot of times there were years where I would literally schedule, a day to do all the birthday cards for the year,
Hmm.
and then have them, and then leave spaces so that I could put little more personal notes in there, or do some generic cards that I could just add a name to and a sentence at the bottom,
Yeah.
so that way it didn't necessarily take that long when it happened every week, because I had
Mhm.
already taken a day, to do all of the plan work for it, all the
Yeah.
basics. So yeah, it's finding in your schedule a way to make sure that you get it done. But
Yeah,
I
and
think
I
it's
I
just
did
that
the birthday cards
important.
once a month. I had a
Hmm.
reminder pop up on my calendar that said do birthday cards, like the third
Hmm.
week before the first Monday of the year, or first
Hmm.
Sunday of that month. And so I pulled up I had planning center or whatever run a list for me. Here's all the birthdays for the month, and then
Hmm.
I already had all the cards printed,
Hmm.
so I didn't even have to go through that process. And so all I had to do was just either handwrite it or print the
Hmm.
label and just stick it on
And
there
just be
and
ready.
invite them back. And so,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't send them out week to week. I would send it out for the month, because a lot of kids, it's their birthday month. So
Right.
and
Right.
then they also have 4 weeks to come in, because I would give them a prize,
Yeah.
a box of candy.
Yeah.
Hey, you can come in, and
Right.
they'd have 4 weeks to redeem their
Mhm.
card.
So, well, one of the previous episodes that Dr. Virginia and I did with you was talking about how to leave well. We
Mm-hmm.
talked about, finding, the best ways to leave when it's time to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And something that I found interesting in your book is that's something that you really build into your ministry, even if you're not planning to leave.
Mm-hmm.
How do you find that concept of preparing your ministry to
Yeah.
be something that you would do every single week in your ministry.
Mhm. The biggest thing that you want to do is you have to, it's from Stephen Covey, you got to begin with the end in mind. And so you're not thinking about leaving per se, but what
Yeah.
you are thinking about is you're trying to work yourself out of a job. You're trying to find people and develop leaders to do what you're doing. You are not the only one that can lead worship. You're not the only one that can tell the Bible story. You're not the only one that can teach Sunday school, to schedule your volunteers, to put out the curriculum. You may be paid to do that, and that may be your primary responsibility, but that is not what you are not the person that has to do it. And part of being a leader is raising up other leaders. And so if you, to prepare the ministry best for that inevitable moment when you're gone, you need to raise up leaders to be able to do the things that you do. Because if you were to all of a sudden, if you were to just, heaven forbid, drop dead tomorrow, like, could the ministry just pick up and go from there? If
Right.
you haven't developed leaders, then all of this work that you're doing is just going to fall away. No one's going to be able to pick up the ball because they don't even know where the ball is.
Right.
Because it's saved
Right.
on your computer at your house that's password protected and no one knows what the password is. Okay. So like you
Yeah.
gotta,
Oh,
you
yeah.
gotta share this stuff and be open and free-handed with these people. The philosophy I like to do is that if you're a minister, if you're the pastor of the group, okay, your job is not to do the work of the ministry. Your job is to train others to do the work of the ministry. Because you may be, like, for me, I just moved to Toccoa. I have never been in this town before. This is ever, like, I've never been up here before. But there are people who were born and raised here and will die in this town. And so there were people before me, there's going to be people after me. And so my job is to help train them and teach them how to do the ministry, because in the Bible, we are all ministers. We're all priests. We're all part of the royal priesthood. So if we're all part of the royal priesthood, just because I have the title pastor and I got a certificate up on the wall doesn't make me more holy than others. The single mom who's doing her best to take care of her kids that volunteers with me once a month, she can do this just as well as I can. And we can talk about calling and all that stuff and passions, but that doesn't mean that she can still do something, and I can still train her and push her to do more things than what she thinks is capable of doing. And that's what a leader does. A leader pushes us to be better and to do more things than we ever thought possible.
Right. Right. Well, and another thing that you said that I found really intriguing was that every service matters and no service matters. I think sometimes we focus on the big picture so much that we forget about what's important. Could you share with us a little bit about your thought behind that?
Yeah. So I call that's a paradox, that is two contradictory ideas are true at the same time. And the idea is that every service matters, because every service is a day that a person can come to Jesus. Every service is a day that someone could make a decision to get baptized. This is a day where they finally had the guts to invite their friend to church and their friend is sitting next to them. This is a huge day for them and for the church, and it's amazing. But also no service matters, because there's also another guy and it's like, we're going to church on Sunday because it's Sunday. And we're just here. We're going to sing the 3 songs. We're going to listen to the worship. And we're going to go home and go have lunch and then, take a Sunday afternoon nap, and that's it. And so you never, as the leader of the room, you never know what day it's going to be. So what that means is that when you come into a Sunday, you want to put excellence into what you're doing. And you want to try to present the most welcoming, the most put together service that's well organized, well structured, something that life change can happen and Jesus can move and the Spirit can move in that place. You want to create that thing. But also, when things go wrong, it's okay. It's all right, because you're just going to do it again next week. And so there's always another Sunday. So you want to put the right, and what that does is that make sure that you put the right amount of pressure on a particular Sunday. Now, there are big Sundays. There's Easter Sunday. I told the story in the book about how it was the Sunday after VBS, and I invited parents to actually come into the kids service, and and they were there for a family service. And so there were guest parents who'd never been to our church who were there to see their kids and be involved in the thing. And then halfway through worship, my computer dies and I lose. And the way I run my service, everything is run off the computer. I do worship videos, my slide backgrounds, my game music, everything is on this computer and it is gone. It's not coming back. And I'm the only one that knows how to fix it. And I'm also the person that's up on the stage because it's a big Sunday. So I was like, hey, I'm going to do the majority of the stuff because it's a big Sunday. And I'm like, what am I going to do? And I don't know what happened at the end of that service. But like how we got through that, we just scrambled and made something happen. But people's lives, the gospel was preached and kids got to learn about Jesus and we got to celebrate VBS. And you know what happened next Sunday? We came back and we did it again and everything worked and nobody really, I remember that Sunday. Those kids don't. So, I mean, some of them might, but it's not like they're talking about it, you know? And so you want to be important. You don't want to come in nonchalant to the service. Like, oh, it's just another Sunday. Who cares? It doesn't even matter. It does very much matter because we're talking about people's eternity. However, if you mess up don't put so much pressure on it that you're just going to crush yourself under the anxiety because like, it's okay. There's always next Sunday. And so we're going to move. We're going to be okay. We're going to move forward.
Well, and some of those moments can end up being some of the most impactful and meaningful because we walked in to our children's worship area on an Easter Sunday morning when just a section of our building's power had gone out. So we had no power and literally we were running extension cords with just the little like twinkle lights like around just to have enough light so people could see it like and it ended up being one of the most precious services I think that we ever had. And so it's one of those things where you kind of have to keep moving forward, but don't beat yourself up so much and don't get so upset that you miss that moment. You know, and I think that we do that a lot. Like I loved how you talked about how we should actually worship during worship.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes we get so caught up in administration that we forget to take those moments with our kids, to really take those moments in our ministry where we're connecting with people and building relationship and not just necessarily running our business, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Because you're up there like, I'm up there leading worship and I'm thinking about, am I on key? Where's the next? Okay, we're in verse 1. Are we going to the bridge? Are we going to the chorus? Am I doing this motion right? I mean, then you're thinking about, are the kids engaged? Are they, what's that fifth grade boy up there doing? He needs to quit messing with his other friend up there, and what you end up doing, you get stuck in the performance and the leadership part of it that you forget to lead. I mean, you forget to worship and the kids are going to do what you do. And so like, I remember watching my kids pastor leading worship and raising his hand. And so I started raising my hand because that's what he was doing. And I remember him closing his eyes and it's like, okay, so I started closing my eyes because that's what he was doing because this is what we do. And so the kids are always watching, they're always learning. So if you actually worship, then the Spirit can move in you while you're worshiping. And that will take care of all these other things that you're worried about there. You still want to do with excellence. So you still want to make sure that you know what you're doing, that you actually know the words and you know the music and all that stuff, but also like take some time to worship, and then the kids will respond by worshiping themselves because they're watching you worship and they can see that. And it's like, okay, now they're going to worship too. And then if everyone starts in there, then even that fifth grade boy who's up in the corner, unless he's just completely obstinate, he's going to realize, whoa, there's something going on here. Maybe I should engage with what's happening.
Right. Oh, yeah. Well, and I think that moves into another point that you made in the book. You were actually, I believe, if I'm remembering right, this was a quote from Jim Weidman that you had learned. That was, are you closer to God right now than you've ever been? If not, whose fault is that? It's really hard words to hear and to think through, but how has that motivated you in your ministry?
When Jim said that to me, talk about being part of community. I was part of Jim's like internship group, and so I really built a community with that. But so he actually said that to us as a group. So in the room, and like it was a gut punch because we can get so busy doing the work of the ministry, doing God's work, that we forget that we're working for God. And so
Mhm.
we got to make sure that our relationship with God is the most important thing.
Mhm.
And so what I try to talk to, whenever I meet a new kids pastor, or someone that's coming in the children's ministry, I always I don't talk to them about all this stuff that we've talked about.
Right.
Like that can come later. What
Right.
matters is their relationship with God, because you love Jesus before you got into this. You need to love Jesus when you're done.
Mhm.
And the only thing that's going to get you through those tough days is your relationship with Jesus. And so you want to make sure that you are maintaining that relationship with him and staying as close to him as possible, because God will take your relationship. The point of this thing, how close are you closer to God than you ever been? And whose fault is that? It's not God's,
Right.
it's
Mhm.
yours. So are
Mhm.
you spending the time to pray? Are you spending the time to worship, to study your Bible, to fast, or to spend time in solitude and worship with God? Are you doing these things with God? Because God will meet you where you are. He will go as deep as you're willing to go. And so,
Right.
and he's not, I mean, he may put things in your way to kind of point you in the right direction, but he's not going to physically pull you there. And so you have to make the decision. I am going to engage in this relationship with
Mhm.
God. And so what you want to do is that no matter how busy you get,
Mhm.
you need to make sure that you have the disciplines in place and the systems in place, your own life systems in place, to say, okay, I am spending time with God in this moment. So even in
Mhm.
those days at camp, when you are getting up at 6 a.m. just so you can get a shower in peace, and you went to bed
Mhm.
at midnight the night before there was an altar call
Yeah.
there, and the altar went for 3 hours, and you're exhausted,
Mhm.
and you got to go
Mhm.
run in a mud pit later.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I'm also
Yeah.
gonna open up my Bible, and I'm gonna do my daily Bible reading today.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm gonna pull out my journal, and I'm gonna write a few things. It may not be like for the full like 15, 20, 30 minutes that I normally do. It may only be
Mhm.
5, but it's something. And so,
Mhm.
but you gotta, because that relationship with God is your most important thing. He's the thing that will sustain you.
Mhm.
He's the thing that he's the one who gives you strength. And so you want to keep that relationship with him as close and as strong as possible, so that when things go bad, and I can tell you, I've been through my life where ministry where things were not pretty, the thing
Mhm.
that got me through was my relationship with God.
Yeah. I've always felt like that because I have those conversations a lot with children's ministers about I just don't have time for
Uh-huh.
my personal devotion. I don't have time for my relationship with God. And I always go back to I think that God honors the time that we take with him, so
Uh-huh.
that it's almost like even if we take that time that we think we don't have, that God is going to honor that with supernatural productivity for other things,
Yeah.
but that we have to make a priority with it. It has to be done.
I think
And
I think
so,
you've said a couple times that people have said, I don't have time. And
mhm,
if you're one of those people that says, I don't have time, what you need to do is you need to change your verbiage. And you change your verbiage, it'll change your thinking. It says, it's not that I don't have time, it's that I have not made time.
right.
Because if you say I don't have time, that means you have no control over
Yeah.
anything that you do. And
Right.
that's not true. You are making decisions about what you do. And so the truth is that it's not that you don't have time to do follow up. It's not that you don't have time to spend time with God, is that you have not made time. You've put other things in front of these most
Hmm.
important things.
Right.
So what do you need to readjust and make time for, so that you can get these things done?
It's a strong word. I love that word. And I actually think that that moves really well into the next kind of thing that I pulled from your book that was just such a great reminder, because I've always worked really hard in my personal life to say I get to do this instead of
Mhm.
saying I have to do this, and it
Mhm.
can be dot 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 whatever you want to put after that.
Yeah.
But I love the way that you mentioned it in the book. How do you feel like our mindset really makes a big difference in our ministry? And you just
Yeah.
touched on
Because
that just a little bit, but a little bit more in just how we look at what we've been given to do.
it's easy as a kids pastor to get martyr syndrome, that
Yeah.
you were off in the corner. Like one church, I wasn't even in the basement. I was on the other side of the street. And so like, and like no one understands. and no one cares, and I'm all alone out here. And when you start putting into that cynical mindset, it becomes a poison. And what you have to do is like, it's not that I have to do this. I get to do this. God chose me. God put me in this position with these kids at this time to minister to them about the gospel, to teach them about Jesus, to teach them how to follow God. And that is an incredible responsibility that he's given us here. And you may be feeling like when you're in that time, this may be a time for you to move out, and it may be that time for you to move out, but it also could be the time that God is testing you and pushing you and seeing if you can push through this before more blessing can come, before more growth can come. And so you have to make the decision, okay, what am I, from a mental standpoint, what am I going to do? Am I going to feel bad because the worship pastor complained that I didn't empty out the trash can after a huge outreach where tons of people got saved? Or am I going to feel great because I just did a huge outreach and a whole bunch of people just got saved? We'll deal with the worship pastor later. True story. I'm not going to name names. So what are you going to do? So that's why you want to have that, like, when you're getting into this. And then it also comes down to, and I open up the book in the introduction with this, of why I do this, is when I first got into children's ministry, I was getting into it and I really loved it because I made the kids laugh. I'm a performer, and so I just like to be up in front and in front of a bunch of people, and making the kids laugh made me feel good. And after about 6 months of that, I wasn't getting the same high from it anymore, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep doing this. And then the new youth pastor had come in, and so he did the whole thing, and then he did an altar call, and he asked kids to come up to pray for salvation. And this kid that I had been investing my life in for a couple years at that point came up to me and asked me to lead him to Jesus. Yeah. And so I led him in the sinner's prayer. And I wrote in the book, I'm getting a little choked up here. I wrote in the book, he walked away a changed person, but so did I. Mm-hmm. And so in those tough times, I remember that boy. He's now grown up. He's married. He's a boat captain. But it matters about what's going on. And so in those tough times, I remember, I can envision. You can't even go there anymore. The building's not even there anymore. I can envision that spot in that moment. And I remember, this is why I'm doing this. This is why I'm dealing with all the garbage and all the stuff for that conversation, because he was the first, but he is not the last. And we're going to keep doing this until we see as many as we can saved.
It's amazing. Well, David, we are just so thrilled that you're with us today. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about where we can find your book and how we can find you. How can we keep in touch with you?
Well, it's available for pre-order right now. And so it comes out September 16th on Amazon and a bunch of other bookstores. It's on my website that you can go check out, and where you can buy it from a lot of those different places. If you want to just go ahead and just get a feel for it, you've listened to this podcast, so you've heard a lot of things, but I've given out my first couple chapters. And so you can download the first couple of chapters for free. The introduction, that story I just shared, and other things. You can get that in there. And then if you really love the book, we'd love for you to be part of the launch team and help us share the information. So if you can pre-buy the book and then tell us that, I can go ahead and give you a PDF copy of the book, and then you can read the book and help us talk about all that. So you can connect with me and get the book and all of that stuff at davidreneau.org. So that's RENEAU. We'll put it in the notes if you forget it. But
it'll be down in it.
davidreneau.org. It's right there on the homepage. So you can grab the books there. You can click there and you can get all the information you want about the book.
All right. Well,
and
David,
connect with
thank
me
you
online.
so much. We're very excited about it. I love that it's such a practical resource, and I think that it's going to be something that's going to be helpful for a lot of children's ministers. And so we appreciate you coming on here and talking with us about it today.
Thank you so much. Thank
And
you for having me.
And friends, we just thank you for being with us today. We thank you for taking time to listen. We thank you for joining us today. We just would ask that you would like and subscribe and all the things. And I know that Dr. Virginia will be back in our next episode, so don't worry. It's much more fun when she can be with us. So we miss her when she's not here, but hopefully we'll get those technology issues all worked out, and she'll be back with us again soon. So I hope everyone has a great week, and we will talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.